Hi, good morning all. Welcome to the technical demo for advanced performance engineering course. Today I'll be talking about something on application monitoring, how to monitor the JVM performance, how to monitor something on Apache Tomcat, which is an application server. So I'll also tell you what are all the metrics that will help to identify some of the performance degradations when you install or when you deploy the source code in Apache Tomcat server. So as part of this technical demo, I'll be talking about how to install a configure agent on Apache Tomcat using Site 24/7 monitoring tool. You have many tools available in the market, primarily Dynatrace, then App Dynamics, then you also have New Relic, Datadog. And in addition to that, if you are focusing on installing something like an open source, you can use Glowroot or you can use other tools that are available. But each of the monitoring tool works differently because you have agent-based monitoring tools and agentless monitoring tools. But the capabilities wise, when I'm talking about the capabilities of every monitoring tool, each of the tool is different, and each of these monitoring tools like Dynatrace, Datadog, App Dynamics, CAAPM or Site 24/7, each of them has support to various tech stack. Like you can install when you have something sitting on Docker or Kubernetes or or on some cloud, or if you want to monitor something like a database, SQL Server, NoSQL Server, or if you want to monitor the entire activity of your machine where you have uh, everything installed on Linux machine, for everything you have a detailed steps available on how to install, how to configure an agent on the target server where you want to monitor everything end to end. Okay, so today we'll be talking about JVM monitoring as well. Okay, I'll tell you how to observe performance data, and I'll also tell you how to find the correct resource, how to find the throughput, or how to find out the response time related problems. And also I'll tell you something like if you have a typical VAS or JTE application components, right? If you're talking about WebSphere or WebLogic application server, you have a lot many components. There is a big component level interaction that is going to happen. For example, if you take Apache Tomcat or if you take WebSphere or WebLogic, when you deploy a WAR file into that, you will have servlets, you'll have EJBs, you have some of the MQ series connectors, or you'll have JDBC drivers. And if your application is again a legacy application, which is actually developed in mainframes, you have to connect all of that from VAS to mainframe components, backend systems, databases, and there are certain things where you also need to configure like thread pool, EJB pools, JDBC pools, connection pools, where you have to manage the memory and also you need to manage the file and network IO. Okay. Now, I'll tell you how to actually get the trial of Site 24/7. Okay, because if you see the machine, right, the machine that I'm currently accessing to, this is a machine where I actually have. Uh, you're able to see my thing, right? I mean, okay. So if you see this one, and if you go to Site 24/7, this is one of the monitoring tool which you can sign up for a trial. Okay. And if you have, like the way I have explained yesterday, if I give you some source code of an application which has some real data with the database installed, example, if I give you some Java application, okay. So what you can do is, uh, initially you can install a web application server like Apache Tomcat. Then if your application server is Apache Tomcat or WebLogic or WebSphere, it can be anything. Then if you have a database like MySQL or SQL Server or Oracle, you have to install that. And again, what you have to do is uh, you have to uh, deploy the application. You have to restart the server and see how the whether the application is working or not. I'll show you what I did. Okay. Now, Do you see this one, Site 24/7? So basically, any performance monitoring tool looks like this, but I'll tell you how to do that. So before you go there, when I'm trying to talk about the application, if you look at my application, right, if you go to a browser and type something like this, because I have installed uh, my Apache Tomcat here. I'm not running the application. If I'm doing like this, you are getting something like the site can't be reached because you did not start your application server. If you see here in the folder IAQ, this is a SailPoint application, which is Identity IQ. You can also install that. Now, if you see here, I have installed Apache Tomcat. If you want to again install Apache Tomcat, what you have to do is you have to go to apache.org, and based on what versions of tech stack that you have, right? So if you go to Apache here, you can download Apache Tomcat server. Okay. So when you want to download Apache Tomcat server, you can go here and check the different versions that are available, because you will understand which version of Apache has to be installed. Tomcat 11 is also available in the alpha version. So if you want to understand which version of Tomcat that you have to install on your Windows Server machine or Linux machine, right? You can go here and see what is the servlet specs you have, JSP spec you have, or WebSocket spec, authentication spec, because each of the version that you're currently seeing here will have different versions that is supported. If you go to which server, it is going to tell you which version of Apache Tomcat is actually supported by which Java version. If you again go back and see, still many of the applications that are developed in Java, right? Even though you have Java 18 or above Java 17 versions, right? People are still using Java 8 version. If you can go to program files and see, you can see that Java 8.8 version is installed with 251 build, where it comes with JDK and JRE folders. In you'll be having so many things like uh, JVisual VM, then you'll have JMC, JFR, all these things you'll have, right? So once you set up the environment variables, without the environment variables, again, you'll not be able to work with any of the uh, application servers. If you see, I have given the Java home as my environment variable, user variable, and you can also see the JRE home as my environment variable, because without these environment variables, the application server is not installed, and the application that you deploy, right, on Apache Tomcat will not work. Now, if you see, I have installed Apache Tomcat 9.x uh, because I was using the earlier version of SailPoint application, which is a Java application that uses Apache Tomcat and that uses MySQL Server database. So this application has other support where you can also deploy this application on JBoss. You can install the same application on WebSphere application server. You can install the same thing on WebSphere, IBM WebSphere, and which supports not only MySQL database, you can also connect this application to Oracle database and SQL Server database. If you want to know how these things are working, I'll show you. And if you see now, Apache Tomcat, it's not an installation. I just downloaded the folder, I extracted that, and you can keep this folder, Apache Tomcat folder, in some place where you can directly start everything. Okay, now if you go to Apache Tomcat, if you go to bin folder, there are so many things again. By simply clicking on startup.bat, it is actually uh, starting the Tomcat server. Okay, so once the Tomcat is server, if you clearly see this command window, you can see that deploying web application archive, this identity IQ war file is being deployed, and it is actually making the Apache Tomcat server And now it is going to it is starting your code in the application server, so that now you can run, you can see the application that is working. Okay. And also, if you clearly try to look on the top, let's say, let the server get started. I'll show you another point, because yesterday what I was doing is I have installed an agent on Apache Tomcat. I'll tell you how I have installed Tomcat agent to monitor the activity of my application that is deployed on Tomcat. So if you see here, uh, as soon as you see the last statement, Apache Catalina startup dot Catalina start server startup in 41795 milliseconds, it means that the application server is started. Okay. Not only that, if you go on the top, the first line, if you see, you have to see this very carefully, because yesterday I was installing the Java agent because I want to monitor everything that is happening on my Apache Tomcat server. I was signing up for Site 24/7. If you observe the first line, you can clearly see that Apache inside Java agent 6.6.0 hooked up with JVM. So it means that the agent is successfully attached, configured to the application server, and you can see this Java agent running now. Now I'll tell you what will happen. Now, if you go back to the browser, okay, and if you type the same URL, localhost 8080, now if you can see the Apache Tomcat 9.0.68 is currently seen. And also, if you clearly see, right, uh, you have a lot of other things where you can see the server status. So, so what, I did not create another role. So, or else, yeah. So you can go to manager help for everything you need a login. I did not create a login, because if you want to create a login, what you have to do is you can not only this one in the configuration part, if you have something like this, uh, Tomcat users, or if you want to go to server, right? When you want to go to server, so if you see here, right, there are some things that you can easily configure. For example, you are typing localhost 8080 to run your Apache Tomcat, right? To see the Apache Tomcat running, it is running on 8080. If you want to change something like the port number from 8080 to 8081, you can also do that. And the redirect port, if you want to change from 8443 to something else, you can do that. Currently, this is using HTTP 1.1 version of the protocol. You can, if you want to change the version of the protocol, you can also do that. There are some configuration parameters where, if you want to, in case if you want to change something on the server with respect to port numbers, with respect to the ports on which your Apache Tomcat instance is running, you can do that from server.xml. Not only that, you have Tomcat users, this thing. When you go to Tomcat users, by default, you have admin and admin roles, manager GUI. Basically, this should work. Let me give it a try. Admin and admin. Uh, as soon as I see this one, yes. So if you want to go to the manager roles, if you can clearly see the Apache Tomcat, the username. For example, if I want to give access to Gopinath, who joined this session on Apache Tomcat, or if I want to give access to Sujit, so what I have to do is I have to uh, copy the same thing, and I can add him, Gopi or Sujit, as a user to access this particular application server. If you take some real-time scenarios, what happens is you may have access to the server where you can see some metrics or some events going on when the test is executed, but you may not have complete access on the application server. For example, you want to take heap dumps, or you want to configure heap settings. In like that, if you want to change the port numbers, if you want to add more number of users, where you can give access of your application server to all of your teammates or to some of your teammates, some configurations are required. And for that, as a performance engineer, you will have to address. I mean, you'll have to uh, gain. You'll need to have the complete access to the application server to make all these changes, to work on all the different activities on the application server. Even in case if you want to change the garbage collection algorithm, you would obviously need complete access to the application server. Okay. Now I'll tell you one important thing. So when I go to server status, you can see the Apache Tomcat version and the JVM version. The Java JDK that I have installed is Java JDK 8. And this JVM is from Oracle. This is an Oracle JVM. And by default, in the real time, I have installed it on Windows 10, but you would be installing it on Windows Server machines 2012, 2016, or 2022, or any flavor of Linux like CentOS or Ubuntu, or I mean the other thing, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, right? RHEL. So the OS version, and you can also see the OS architecture. You can see the name of my host where I installed Apache Tomcat. It is perf server i76 and the IP address. Now, if you clearly see the other things that you can see if you have access to the server is you can see the memory utilizations. For example, if you want to understand. So this was my article. If you look at these diagrams, right? Uh, I mean, for your understanding, this is the young generation. This is totally called heap memory and non-heap memory. The heap memory is called the combination of young generation with Eden space, multiple survivor spaces S0, S1, and older generation is called heap memory. And non-heap memory is basically the permgen. So forget about permgen. Permgen, which is part of non-heap memory, is available only Java JDK 7, and no one is now using Java JDK 7. No applications to the maximum are using Java JDK 7. So from Java JDK 8, the permanent generation, which is also called permgen, is now replaced by metaspace from Java JDK 8, which is called non-heap memory. So if you see here, I think I did not add the new diagram, but if you go back and see in the Apache Tomcat server, you have the Eden space, which is N generation, then the old generation, then you also have survivor spaces. So you can see all these three things as you did not get the complete split yet, but you at least got what is the heap memory, what are all the areas in heap memory like Eden space, old generation, and survivor spaces. It is talking about the young generation and old generation. There are other memory areas. I'll explain you when I talk about JVM architectural runtime data areas. You have port cache, you have compressed class space, meta space. In case when you don't have monitoring tools available or configured with your application server instance, when you're doing a test, if you have access to the data application, sorry, not database, application server, you can see what is the initial heap memory that is set, what is the total memory, what is the maximum, and you can also see the split of how much amount of memory that has been used. Okay, so you can see something like that. Not only that, not just the server status. You can also go to the manager app, it's access denied. If you go to the host manager, right, there are host manager. I don't think so. I have access. Only the server access was there, but I'll try logging in again. So again, you have to add the admin GUI role, and if you clearly see, I don't if you clearly see not the Catalina back. Again, if you go to Tomcat users, right? If you go here, there is nothing like admin GUI is installed. If you see the admin is installed, manager GUI, but if you see when you're trying to access this host manager, you did not have something like this. If you want to add admin GUI, then you can simply copy this one. Okay. Well, let's say that I am trying to add something like this because I'm trying to add another user role. Okay, this is an admin GUI. Admin GUI is not added. So what I'm doing is I want to give the Tomcat and the Tomcat because the reason why I'm using adding the user role here is if you don't have access to the monitoring tool, if you can't understand what's happening inside your application server with the application that is deployed, you were actually going to server status because the role was actually there. I logged in with admin and admin. Then I was able to see the JVM memory utilizations here. Then I'm also able to see something like this, the time that it is actually taking max threads. Then it is going to talk about the bytes and bytes received. All these things are there. But when I'm talking about the manager app, manager GUI app, or when I'm talking about the host manager app, there is no admin GUI installed to access this part. For that, I went to Apache Tomcat users. Now I added this one, username Tomcat, the role is admin GUI. I saved this one. So whenever you are making some changes on any of the configurations files in any database server or in any application server, what you have to do is you have to go and restart the application server to change to take the change to reflect the change of the configuration that you have to set. You have to stop your server, then you have to start it because you have made some changes. Because before I start my server again, I want to go to the configuration here. I want to go to the Tomcat users and I want to just cross check if my role that I have added just now has been taken by my Tomcat users configuration file or not. So once I close this one, what happens is I stopped my database server, sorry, my application server. Now what I'm doing is I am now restarting my server again because I changed something with respect to configuration. I added a user role. So what I'm doing is I am starting a server now. Is it? There is other way of starting it. You can go to simply command prompt and you can use startup.bat file. When you run this one, it is going to start the Tomcat. Startup.sh file is basically for what? Is basically for Linux systems, and bat files are used to start the application servers. Okay, I mean in any Windows or typical Linux systems. So again, I would like to highlight this point. When you see this one, when something is going on, at least by looking at the command prompt, when something is actually getting scrolled, when you start the server, the last statement is talking about deploying web application archive, the war file, identity IQ war file. So if you might have some questions like, okay, now the last statement again, server startup in 41795 milliseconds, right? Then the same thing, if you see the first one, APM inside Java agent, which I configured, you can see that the Java agent. I'll show you this argument is what you have to add on the top of one file in the configuration. Again, if you want to configure, install the agent on Apache Tomcat, I'll show you that. Now, going back to the same thing, if you go here, uh, okay, Apache Tomcat. Now, if you do this one, you're getting it. Now, if you go to Manager app, you'll have to wait a little because installing something like this on a Windows standalone machine will obviously take time. But when you are working on the same activity on a Windows server and Linux machines as a server. It works differently. It's like it's pretty fast. Okay, and if you want to go to the manager app, let me see if this is working. This is not working. What I'll do, identity IQ. So this was my application. Okay, SailPoint identity IQ. So earlier when I'm trying to access the application, this is the application. I'll actually give you the source code where you can log in. Okay, so if you don't start your application server, this application will not work. I mean, if you're clicking on something, you'll not have any activity on this one. Okay, so what I want to do is I'll again try to go to something like this localhost, because I want to show you some basic parameters. Host manager. Let it take time, but if you see the current application right here, this is the application. We have so many things you can create. Basic scripts, okay, with some transactions. Don't create too many transactions, because the environment that you're trying to create on your personal laptop might be already installed with so many things. You will have so many things uh, pre-installed because you're using it for many purposes, right? A typical i5 to i7 processor with 16 GB RAM, uh, with any amount of SSD, even if it is 128 GB SSD or 256 GB SSD that you have by default on your laptop, you install this application on the SSD, not on the normal SATA HDD. Okay. So basically, if you have a personal laptop with i5 processor, 16 GB RAM, and you have a SSD, right? So 256 GB SSD and 1 TB HDD, do not install anything on normal hard disk, normal SATA hard disk. Make sure that your application or your Apache Tomcat installation, database installation is happening on SSD, because it will be much more fast. So once you have this application, so what I'll do is, if you go to site 24/7, if you go to APM, right, you have to watch very carefully here. There are so many things. Okay. So if you go to the alarms, I got some Windows update because I have configured this puff server I76. I installed the agent. So uh, if you clearly see, this is that machine. If you see, there is a Windows update that is pending since very long. Okay, even that activity, I mean, your application is able to have some Windows update particular machine, because I have configured this one into my monitoring tool. Okay, so if you go to the web, you can use a website monitor, which is going to help you to do website performance monitoring. If you have a, for example, if you click on view demo, right, you'll get some of the aspects, at least that will make you understand what are the things that you can see. If you see the demo site 24/7 W3 schools, you can see the outages, you can see the inventory, you can see the log report, and you can also see in the log report, what you can see is the HTTP status codes. There are few things that many of the performance engineers have no clue on, have no clue for what reason the response time of a particular transaction has gone so high. If you take a particular scenario from here, for example, if you take the complete end-to-end response time of a specific transaction, you really don't know what is the DNS response time. DNS response time is one parameter that can significantly affect the application performance. You can see the DNS response time here. If your connection time is so high, obviously it is going to give an impact on the application performance, right? If your connection time is high, obviously it is going to increase the response time of the transaction. So to make the connection establishment, There is one important parameter again, which is called SSL handshake. Depending upon the SSL version you're using or TLS version that you're using and HTTP protocol versions that you're using, the application design, the way the application is actually talking to the components each other, uh, the SSL handshake time is fast. The faster it is, the faster response times you see. And there are some situations where your SSL handshake can take a lot of time, again, which can increase the response time. You can also see the first byte time. Time to first byte TTFB is one of the important metric, along with page load time in client side performance. Because if you ask me what is again time to first byte, when you send a request like an end user, the first byte of information that is received from the server within how much amount of time the first byte of information is received from the server for the request that is sent from the user. So this one has to be very quick. The faster the TTFB is, you will see the less performance issues from the client side. And you see the page download time, then you have the response times, then you have a lot of other things. So you can select these things to find out anything. I mean, you will get the location wise, then you'll get where is the outage. If you see the summary, it is also telling you in the events timeline what is the total response time, the availability, which is 100% up with zero downtime, and the throughput. And you also have different scores. You can customize this one to see to what level you can get the information. Okay, so even if you want to get some information on something like DNS server, if you want to uh, see something on a DNS like this, DNS will also have so many configuration details and the host name, and you will have different metrics for all the metrics. Because this is access denied, as this is a trial version, you won't be having access to all the different activities. But again, once you put the APM, right, APM, APM, this is where you're going to have applications or anything that you are seeing here. So not only that, just a minute, I logged in with, I'm just trying to understand with which account I logged in. So what I wanted to tell you is, let's say you are trying to install something here. So, okay. So when you're trying to install something, if you have a MySQL server, or if you have some other server, right? You actually get, why did you go to demo? I'm in the demo part, so I don't want to go with the demo. So this was my actual one. So I actually, when I tried to visit any of the demo on a specific monitoring aspects, it is going to take you completely through the demo. So, but the things that I currently have here is you can add a website monitor. If you go to APM, right, this was my application, which I have already installed. If you click on this my application, right, this is where you can see a lot of parameters. Before that, before I come here, I want to tell you how to install anything. I mean, if you see Microsoft IaaS server, because I have already installed something like Puff server agent on this. So two things. If you want to install and configure agent on an Apache Tomcat, you need to download Java agent and you have to configure that. For example, if you want to do Windows monitoring on a specific machine, for example, same Perf server i76. So whenever you install Windows monitoring agent on this i76, it is going to capture the metrics of Apache Tomcat because Apache Tomcat is already installed on i76. It is going to get the complete metrics of IA server because IA server is also installed on i76. It is going to get the complete insights of MySQL server. If MySQL database server is installed on i76, you'll also get the complete metrics of MySQL server as well. There is some Windows monitoring activity kind of thing. So you can go with Kubernetes. You can add Kubernetes monitors. You can add a server monitors. You can configure to the cloud for everything, depending upon the component in the cloud. If you want to configure something to the EC2 instance, if you click on EC2, it is going to give you the instructions on how to configure and how to install, how to integrate AWS account with Site 24 cross 7 monitoring tool. It's not entirely different in other monitoring tools as well. Each of the monitoring tool will support with the help of with the using tech stack of AI ops. AI ops actually it is uh, giving support to monitoring end-to-end visibility. You can uh, connect to most of the things. I mean, for example, you have a VMware here. So when I say VMware, uh, it is a typical ESXi server, right? When I say ESXi server, if you click on Windows or if it is a Linux, I don't know if you have complete idea on ESXi server. Basically, ESXi servers are so big, it will have some 4 TB, 6 TB of hard disk, then it will have some 512 GB of RAM, and then it will have 46 vCPUs or 48 vCPUs or 56 vCPUs. So what basically they do with VMware on ESXi server. So they break all the VMs into bits and pieces. All the participants, for example, the 12 participants who are into my team, if we are using ESXi server, with very big configuration, I'll break that ESXi server into bits and pieces in the form of virtual machines. Each VM will have 8 vCPUs, 16 GB RAM, and 500 GB hard disk. Each of them is a VM. So you are using your personal laptop. I'm sorry, office laptop with the help of VPN. You log into that VM and you do all the activities. For example, in the VM that you're working, if you're working in a JPMC client or Bank of America client, you access all the applications with the help of VM where your Apache JMeter is installed or Vusion installed to create all the scripts. Okay. So like that, if you want to monitor, see, you can see the ESXi host. So once you do that, what you get is you are going to get the complete utilizations on VMware. Okay. So if you want to monitor something like VMware cluster, it is going to monitor, or if you want to monitor a VM, it is going to monitor the entire hardware and software utilizations of that particular ESX server for all the VMs. Not only that, if you want to install a specific infrastructure agent to monitor specific VM, it is going to pull that information. Now, if you see here, if you go to the server, perf server i76, if you click on this one, you are getting the detailed information of the entire perf server i76 because I have installed Windows monitoring agent on that. Now, if you clearly see the availability of the server is what you can see here. And the other point is you can also see the CPU to just 2.62 CPU. When you're trying to get all the insights of what happened in your Apache Tomcat server, you have to initially customize the time that you want to look at and the memory utilization, disk utilization, and you can also see the downtimes. Not only that, it's not always the application that is running on your application server is actually consuming high amount of resources. It can be something else. If your application server is shared, where some other 3 to 4 applications are deployed on a sharing basis on the same Apache Tomcat, obviously you will be having high resources and high resources utilization like CPU, memory, and disk. So you have to make sure that if your application, if your process, if your services on the applications are the reason for high CPU or high memory or any performance degradation, then you have to start investigating. And the main drawback of having multiple applications on the same server, when any application server is crashed or when when a application is actually problematic on the application server, all the remaining applications can go down. There is a possibility. Okay. Even when you go to this one, it is going to tell you the service that is actually taking the CPU, the process memory, the process by memory and by CPU is what you can see. The memory usage, the CPU usage, everything you can see. And when you go to CPU, right, you can also see yesterday I told you system idle, percentage idle time. If your CPU is 0% idle, it means that the CPU is 100% utilized. So you can look at all the different metrics. You can see different metrics like CPU utilization and the system idle percentage, CPU utility. Then you can see the rate at which the interruption context switches are happening. So all these things, right, depending upon the timeline that you select, you can see the interruption context switches. And like the way I said, if you have 10 cores or if you have 16 cores, if you want to see the utilization of each and every individual core by CPU, how they are getting utilized, you can also see that from here. So if there is one core that is actually consuming a lot, if there is one core that is not having CPU utilization at all, you will try to, it will be easy for you to investigate and identify the performance related problem. Okay. And not only that, you can go to the memory and in the same way, like the way you have for CPU, right? You have multiple metrics for memory. You have the swap memory utilization, memory use, memory breakup, and you can see this one. The reason why you are not seeing anything like JVM heap usage or something is because you are in perf server. Okay, if in the similar way, if you are going to APM, I want to go. If I'm going to my application, uh, if you go to JVM here, this is where again you're getting multiple metrics. You can see the CPU utilization. Uh, uh, you can see the CPU usage of your JVM, the runtime total memory, the runtime free memory, and most importantly, if you want to know how many classes are loaded, how many classes are unloaded, the amount of time when your application source code is executed in the JIT compilation phase, how much time it is actually taking in JIT. That is called JIT time. Okay. Now, in the similar way, if you're coming to the heap memory, uh, this is where you are again seeing the hidden space, survivor tenured space. You can easily see the split of the heap memory and non-heap memory, and you can see the maximum value that is set, the committed, the used memory, all of these things. And not only that, you're going to get the JVM CPU usage, JVM memory usage, and you can see how the runtime data areas inside your heap, like Eden space, survival spaces, or old generations, are actually having utilizations by average. What is the spike? What is the 90th percentile? What is the maximum values? Depending on that, you can take some decisions actually. Okay, so now if you ask me, how did I get all this information into my monitoring tool? That's the question, right? So how did you get that? So if you want to get something like this, if you have a Microsoft SQL Server, or if you want to have a MySQL, if you click on, I don't know if there is a MySQL, but MySQL Server, if you click on Add Monitor, if you clearly see there is an agent, right? So how do you do this agent process? If you go to this agent, you can simply download this agent. Okay. If you download this agent, you have to uh, sorry. Um, okay, once you download this agent, you need to click on I accept. The download is here. Okay. I'm not sure if see if repair, because I think I already have something installed on that. So when I install it, what happens is it is going to ask you the key. Okay, so there is one file, there is one configuration parameter, there is one place in the database where you have to go there, just copy the key that is shown here. Okay, You have to, okay, you have to copy this one. You have to go to this one, and you have to, while installing that file in the MSI, you have to apply this key. And once this is done, it is going to give you the database information as well. Okay, when you click on add monitor, it depends on what you want to monitor. Okay, for example, you want to monitor something like Amazon Web Service, you want to monitor a network device, least to least, if you want to monitor something on any application server, whatever it is, Windows Server monitoring. Let's say Windows Server monitoring, if you have this one, I'll just, again, I'll add this one. And Windows Server Agent is already installed. That is why the reason it is actually, as I have already installed, it is asking repair. Else, it will ask, when you click on next, what will happen is it will ask you to copy the key that is shown here. Okay, once the key is shown here, once you apply the key, it is going to show you everything. Okay, so the same thing applies to other parameters. If you go to the APM, now if you go to the application, it is giving you the application information because the Java application is there in your application server. If you don't have any application that is hosted on Apache Tomcat, you will not get any information like this, because you have application inside your Java, inside your Java application inside your application server. That is why the reason it is going to give you every information like this. So you can see the identity IQ here, my application. When I log in, I am actually trying to click on multiple things. So each of the transaction is a different URL from the end user aspects. So when you do that, so every response time, every activity of every thing that I'm actually trying to do on my application is being shown in the in what, in the monitoring tool. Okay, so if you see here, uh, last 30 minutes is what I have. So if you see here, uh, I'm not sure if I'm seeing the timestamp. Uh, Identity IQ home.jsf message catalog home work items. Then these are all the different URLs which are called transactions from the performance front. You have the count how many times you actually visited this particular URL and the errors in that particular request and the average response time. So I'll tell you one very important point here. If your average transaction response time of a specific request is so high, or if you have so much of processing time that is actually spent on a specific request, what is it? Let's say home.jsf 2284 milliseconds. 2284 milliseconds home.jsf is the request that is having high average transaction response time 2284 milliseconds. Okay, and each of the requests, it is also shown with information like average CPU time, the bytes out, all these things. So each of the request, right? If you want to know, for example, you have a transaction like such, and if you have one or more requests in that, if you have one or more requests in that, you can monitor that particular request with average response times, and you can go back to the developers and ask them to do some code profiling on the code snippet of that particular request to find out why it is taking so much of time. And coming to the databases, uh, because these are all the databases I currently have. I mean, this is basically um, uh, every database operation that is actually part of uh, my identity IQ application. How many times each of the database operation is actually executed, and how do you identify uh, a long running query? For example, if you see there are so many database operations, right? I am doing some transactions manually from the front end, but when you try to do the same thing with multiple users by with different anticipated load conditions, so what you see is you see a lot of database operations. When you see a lot of database operations, by looking at from here, you need not break your head. You don't need to go to the database. You don't need to find out, you don't need a separate strategy to find out why which query, where it is taking so much of time. When you're doing performance testing, you get an average transaction response times for all the transactions. Go to a specific transaction, but there, as a performance engineer, you have to uh, find out how many HTTP requests are part of my web server, how many methods are invoked on my application server, how many SQL queries or storage procedures are executed on the database server. Okay, so if you know the breakdown of your particular transaction with high response time, you will understand which database operation is part of your transaction with the help of your DBA. So once you see the database operation, if you see this one, you will get an idea on how many times it is executed, what are the errors you have, and what is the response time, minimum response time, maximum response time. And you'll also get the total response time of that particular SQL query. So when you have a problematic SQL query with a high amount of time or a problematic stored procedure, so again, by looking at the execution plan, by looking at some of the other parameters like indexes, joins, missing indexes, or using a where clause, select clause, uh, where they are not required can increase the response time of a SQL query, right? Then that part that comes in SQL query tuning. So in the similar way, you have traces. If you want to get the traces, you can also get the traces. And I already have already shown you the summary. You can see the GC activity that is actually happening on Perf server I-74. You can see the mark sweep, then the collections that happen because you don't have anything that is running. No traffic on the application. That is the only reason you are seeing collection counts as 0. Or if you're running a test by creating a small script, and if you're running a test with 50 users for 30 minutes, you can easily see the rate at which minor GCs are happening, major GCs are happening, full GCs are happening. And time spent, right? The percentage of time spent in GC. So every time the GC is running right, it will have stop the world events. You know what is stop the world events? Every time the GC is running, it has to stop the application from working, which means that it has to suspend all the executing threads. And for whatever the time the GC is busy in freeing up the memory and removing the unreferenced objects from the heap memory, for that amount of time, the application will halt. That is the only reason GC must be always in milliseconds, not in seconds. So when you experience high GC pause times, it is the primary reason for high CPU utilization. It is the primary reason for high response times. If your GC pause time is so high that GC pause times will obviously get added to the end user transaction response time. And instead of when you want to have the response time of a transaction for 3 seconds, and if your GC pause time is 3.6 seconds, your end-to-end transaction response time in total is now 3 plus 3.66 seconds, which is 6.6 seconds. That is where GC optimization or GC tuning comes into picture. You also need to worry about at what rate the minor GCs are happening, major GCs are happening. If you have more frequent GCs that are happening, is it good or bad? Anyone?
More frequent also consume high memory utilization.
Very simple.
Many
Every time
stop the world events will happen.
GC is being managed by something called native threads. Okay, native threads basically which are being managed by operating system. So you have daemon threads and non-daemon threads concepts. These are thread types. One is user threads, one is the system threads, you can say. So all the GC threads are not user threads. Okay. When you have less number of GC threads in your application, the more number of times the GC will run. When you have the GC running more frequently, what happens? Every time the GC is running, it requires more computational power, which means that it requires more CPU. Every time GC is running, your CPU is going to get. Okay, in that context, you can monitor all these things. And if you have, most of us, right, in the log analysis part, when you're trying to find out something with respect to performance degradations, there are two things. One is errors and one is exceptions. If you ask me which one is bad, exceptions are bad, errors are bad. Errors are bad, not exceptions are bad. Except not every exception is an error. Exception is basically it can be a warning, it can be some sort of information if something is not working in different ways. So exceptions are something which will help the performance engineers and developers equally to understand what type of error it is. Example, HTTP status codes. Many of the people don't see HTTP status codes, don't take them seriously in performance testing because if you see HTTP 302s and 304s, okay, what are that for? Anyone?
Redirect.
When you have too many redirects, what will happen?
Round trips will be increased.
It is going to spend extra time on identifying the location of the resource, and it is going to give you the increased response time. So even if you have too many redirects and if you see the high number of HTTP 302s and HTTP 304s in your application, obviously that is going to give you high response times. So there are some things, especially when you ask me, before you start with performance engineering, it is very essential and crucial to start with basics and fundamentals. If you don't know what is TCP/IP doing, if you don't know the role of TCP/IP, how to analyze a data packet, right? When you take a TCP/IP, TCP dump analysis, the reason why you are taking TCP dump analysis is to find out if any of the DNS queries are failing, then you should know what is DNS. Simple thing, in cloud, they'll be using something called caching. One of the recent technique that is used in caching is edge caching. Edge caching, if you want, you can Google it. It is going to get the information from the nearest service. There is a new caching policy, which is called edge caching. So to know all of that, there are some basics and fundamentals that you have to be familiar with. And if you clearly see the breakdown, when I'm talking about the service map, uh, I don't have anything. My application I have, then I have my database, and everything is sitting on POP server i76. If it is a distributed architecture, this is where a performance engineer will need understanding how your application is talking to internal and external components along with your third-party services. That is where the service map is for. So service map is basically going to give you the utilizations of everything. Response times of top 5 external components. It is a MySQL database, then error count, then you have throughput, and application parameters you have in the service map. You can also go to the tabular view. Okay, you can go to the application parameters. Then most important thing is the thread profiles. Okay, so I'm not doing anything here because it's a trial one. So you have other areas like this, and you have server metrics. Server metrics. When you say server metrics, you will have so many metrics here. So all these metrics will definitely help you to understand where it went wrong. What could be the possible problem? What is the reasons for low CPU utilization? If you have a low CPU utilization, for example, waiting for something on IO, when you have more number of disks, you need to look on something like a RAID configuration. RAID 5, RAID 6, RAID 10, something like that. You need to optimize the rate at which if you have a high number of writes, high number of reads. If you want to optimize the IO on, I'm sorry, my throat is a little bad today. So if you want to optimize the IO, you need to look at the disks, you need to look at there is always a question that is asked. If I don't know how many of you have faced this, how to optimize high reads and writes, or how to optimize high IO on a database. It's not easy. It's very complex task. This is one of the biggest bottleneck I have ever worked with. You can Google it, you can write on it, or you can interpret with your own experience. And also, I am going to talk about this in the upcoming classes. Okay, so the main thing that I actually forgot to tell you is The configuration parts, the configuration parameter. So I'm going to look at these are the alarms. The alarm that I currently have is it's saying what it's going to assign the technician, because it is actually asking for a Windows update. Okay, alarm duration also you can see. Pick this alarm, you can do that, and you can see the infrastructure events. You can see the outage history. You see, you even type this is the availability, because you know why you got this alarm, because when I sleep in the night time, so I shut down this machine. So as soon as I shut down, right, when my system turns off, it is going to impact the availability of the server. That can also be picked as an alarm, and it is going to show you uh, as one of the event type. Okay, so you can severity up, down, critical, all these things you can see here. And outage history is also there is a downtime for this one. If you see the downtime for the amount of time that I have stopped, you can also see the downtime for 8 hours 15 minutes I stopped my machine. So it is actually uh, recorded in the outage, and you can see the log report and you can see the alert logs. So the final point before I close my session, what I want to explain you is uh, so let's say that I am trying to add the monitor. No. So this comes with some trial version. So what I suggest all of you is you can simply, if you already know how to install a Kubernetes instance on your Linux machine, this comes with the trial, you can also add a server monitor here. Okay, so when you enter server monitor, you can clearly see this one, right? So for example, I want to do something on my Apache Tomcat, or I want to install something on Windows. So when I click on Windows, so if you click on Windows Server Agent, right, by default it is downloaded, and once you install it, it is going to ask for the license key, and you can run it. But here, when it comes to add server, if I go to a specific Apache Tomcat, so when I say Apache Tomcat, you have to go there, or if you have to install on PostgreSQL, so you have to initially do all these things. So it's not very complex. Whatever the instructions that you have here, you can follow that. You can make required changes to successfully establish integration between the monitoring tool and on the machine where you have installed where you have Postgres installed. Okay, so when I'm talking about these things like APM and all, so if you go to the Open Telemetry again, it is going to give you Open Telemetry agent. If you want to install something on Java, again you can go here. S- you can download the Open Telemetry collector jar, and you can do this by adding all these things. You can, if you want to know these agents, right? Initially, what I did yesterday, I have downloaded Java agent. Okay, so if you see that in the Java agent, uh, do you see this one? Java agent, APM, Java APM insights Java agent. So APM insights Java agent. Uh, when you extract this one, you have, I'm sorry if I'm okay. When you extract this one, you'll get a folder like this. Once you download a agent from Apache Tomcat, once you extract this one, you'll get a agent like this. You have a config file. Do you see this one? Watch very carefully. So when you go here, when you click on edit with Notepad++, you will see one thing very important. Okay. So do you see this one? So when you install a trial, when you install a trial, when I'm actually doing something on my, when I'm trying to do some sort of exercising, right, on this one, you're following, you're following some instructions on how to download and all. When you try to download something like this, So if you go to the servers, or if you go to in the same way, if you go to Apache Tomcat, right? Apache Tomcat is going to give you initially what I'm saying. I'm downloading the agent. You'll get the zip file. You extracted that, and in the configuration file, you'll get a license key like this for the Apache Tomcat. So once you get that, you have to open this file and you have to give this license, and it is valid only for a week or 2 weeks, which is of trial. Once you do this one right, there is one argument again in the installation that is available. So what you have to do is, if you go back in the Apache Java agent, you have a Java agent jar file. This is the most important thing to actually integrate and connect to your Java application that is deployed on Apache Tomcat. The same thing applies when you are talking Java agent. I think many of the tools have the same agent that will work for Apache Tomcat, JBoss, that will work for WebSphere and WebLogic, any Java agent. So if you see this one, now what you have to do is to connect, to make that establishment here, we have to go to this one, IAQ, Apache Tomcat, Tomcat. Then if you go to bin, there is one file called catalina.bat. This is one of the important file. When you go to the catalina.bat file, on the top of your this one, you have to pass these arguments. These arguments are available in the Tomcat Java agent installation process in site 24/7. You can go here -Java agent, and you have to copy the path of where this Java APM inside Java agent jar is available, which is nothing but this location. This location, this one. So this one, if you pass it, this location, if you pass this in this one, if you have to set this Java options -Java agent. This is given in the APM Java infrastructure agent installation process in site 24/7 documentation. So this is available from here. I have customized it. Is available in C users HP downloads, APM Java inside folder, and this is the jar file that I'm doing. Okay. So once you save this one, what you have to do? You have to stop the server and start the server. So when you stop and start the server, what you have to primarily notice is cmd shutdown.bat. I did. I stopped my server. The same thing. What I'm doing is startup.bat, which will start my Apache Tomcat server again. Okay. When it is starting Apache Tomcat server, the first statement you should see, if you want to know whether your Java agent configuration is successful, Java agent is configured on my Apache Tomcat server or not. You can go here and see the information line APM inside Java agent with version v6.6 successfully hooked up with JVM with process ID 1536. For more information, you can go to Java agent logs. Okay. For more information, you can work on that and see what's happening inside your this thing. So when you go to APM, you will have multiple applications running. When you go to server, you will have this thing. So when you go to server, when I'm talking about Power Server i74, it is going to give you the entire information of what's happening inside your machine. You will also get the outages. You will get the logs report. If you see the outage, if you click on view RCA, it is going to tell you the IP address, and it is also going to tell you what is the downtime. You can go to the view app logs and you can find out for what reason it went down. I manually stopped this machine, so it has almost 8 hours, 15 minutes downtime or something like that. And also, as a performance engineer, not only installing configuring agents, knowing about the servers, knowing in and out of all the WebDB servers. You also need to know how to analyze the logs using log files. For example, you have ELK. I'm using Greylog. I'm using Splunk. If you're analyzing a very big log file, which is in lakhs of lines, how do you identify the problem, or how do you catch an exception or an error, or the reason for the outage, or the reason for server crash, something like that. It is also equally important to adopt the complete knowledge and experience, gaining experience on how monitoring tools work, how observability works. It's not just limited to monitoring. It's all about playing with the monitoring tool. You need to go to each and every place, every nook and corner inside your monitoring tool. You need to install agents. You need to create your own environment. Even if you're for example, if you're learning a Docker or Kubernetes, you create on Windows machine, you simply install uh, Oracle VirtualBox. Uh, if you want to work on Linux, you put CentOS 7 or 8 ISO image or Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or you can also install Windows distribution Linux package on uh, Windows machine to actually work on Linux machines. So if you have a Docker, if you have a Kubernetes, or if you have something else, every tool that is available in the market now comes with a trial, mostly with 80% of the features enabled. So you have to make use of that trial version only when you want to learn. If you're just signing up for trial, then leaving it for some time, then that will go waste. You cannot use it for the second time because some of the tools are unique. It takes your IP, it takes your machine address, everything, ISP details. So even if you're using multiple email IDs, you cannot explore. But again, there is other way where you can get in touch with the product teams. You can write an email to Site 24/7. Uh, and there are other features with Site 24/7. For example, Site 24/7 uh, uh, JSON to YAML. So there are so many converters actually. I don't think so. You might be familiar with all these things. Every tool has something like this. So you can convert your JSON. You have free tools, and you have DNS tools. So many tools. I mean, TLS check for real-time blacklist check. You port generator, IPv4 converter. So if you want to use something like free tools or thread dump tools, you also have thread dump analyzer, method execution summary. So a lot of things are there. Okay, so it's not just limited to something. Even if you want to know, uh, very simple thing. If you want to know, uh, if your CPU is i7, if your CPU is i7 processor, if your RAM is DDR4, DDR5, there are some utilities like this CPU Z, so which is going to run on your machine. So what does it do is it's going to tell you the CPU board information. If you really don't know the core speed of the cores that you have, the cache information, how many ways it has, how many number of cores, so how many number of threads. Basically, if you have given the complete access to the environment with no restrictions, there are many tools that you can try to get the information. You got to know this machine RAM is DDR4, right? And the size of the DDR4 RAMs that you have is 32 GB. And you can also see the graphics information, the graphic card that I have, NVIDIA GeForce GT. And you can see what type of graphic card it is. Even you have something like DDR3 and DDR4. So all these informations, if you ask me a question like all these things are really required or not, as a performance engineer, you should know how a CPU is going to take instructions, or how it is going to pick the instructions, how it is executing them, how it is processing them, how it is successfully completing the tasks, how threads in OS are actually working, how threads are switching the tasks across multiple cores, what's happening with context switching. So if you ask me the basics and fundamentals from CPU, from disk point of view, from memory basics, from network fundamentals. All these things are required to successfully accomplish performance engineering if you want to optimize the performance of application or your system or your environment or a subjected component, anything. So that's all for today. And thanks all of you for joining. And very nice talking to you all. And the regular sessions would start from Monday. Thank you.